I really liked that aspect of it. It was very different from what I thought it would be.
It's a storybook. It's a fairy tale. It's hearsay. It's legend.
And then the dude with the gold-plated nose and his nips.
This movie was super nipple heavy.
We see all of this stuff, and it's like, talk about childhood trauma, dude. Like, Jesus.
Potentially been intimidated by Charlize Theron's
maybe
performance, because there's a lot of gravitas there. There's a lot of grit.
And it's like, girl, I feel your freaking pain because I know now what you went through. Hello and welcome to our podcast. We're Nox and Noah, and today we're talking about Furiosa. So I'm so excited about this because I love the Mad Max series. It's awesome, and I'm ready to just talk about everything. This movie was freaking insane, and there's a lot that I liked about it, of course, but there's some things that I didn't necessarily like about it, and there are some things I noticed that there were parallels with the previous movie because this was the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. So yeah, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about this movie first, Noah, because we haven't talked about it yet. So yeah, I have a feeling that you're going to say some things about what you didn't like first, but you know, I'm just gonna let you say your thing, and we'll see if I agree.
I would say my feeling about this movie is complicated.
Okay.
They're just like Fury Road. There's a lot that I appreciate and a lot that I don't connect with. Mm-hmm. But I lean more with Fury Road. I lean more on appreciating it. Mm-hmm. This one, and I have a hot take on it. We can kind of table for later. But I feel like the reception hasn't been mind-blowing, but I feel like there's one change that could have happened behind the scenes that would have improved the perception of this movie, fundamentally.
Interesting.
We can kind of get into that, but okay. I didn't hate it at all. No, that's not like a neg. I promise you.
It is a neg.
That is not a neg. You started out by saying you think that I talk about stuff I didn't like. There's stuff that worked and stuff that didn't. And some of the things that excelled in Fury Road thrived in this one, and some of the things that excelled in Fury Road, on the other hand, didn't work here.
Yeah. I can see that. There are some things in my opinion, the cinematography wasn't as strong. I rewatched Fury Road right before this, and I noticed that there are pretty much the cinematography, almost every single shot was beautiful. It was like a work of art. And with Furiosa, we had those moments where, she was against the fire. We had those moments with the blood smoke, with Dementus and things like that. But it wasn't as just intense as Fury Road, which is totally fine. This is a completely different movie. This is about Furiosa's story, about her life and everything like that. So it was a much more it was just a different story being told. So that's totally fine. But it was a little bit you kind of expect that, where it's you expect that work of art. But this one was just different.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about this to try and justify a little bit how it looks a little bit different by saying, it's a storybook, it's a fairy tale, it's hearsay, it's legend, which they all are. They're all basically told from someone else's point of view as, here's the legend that happened. Mm-hmm. So the argument is this is a different storyteller telling the story of Furiosa. I think where it struggles a little bit is when you have such a high standard from Fury Road and it's made by the same filmmaker.
Right. Different cinematographer.
Correct. But it feels slightly lesser than in the visuals.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Although we can go into right now, I guess, from the beginning on and everything like that. It is interesting how it's a different story and everything like that. But they did start it out very similarly with the narration of everything that happened prior to the story being told, the world going to shit and everything like that. We had this narrator who's telling you about the lives of the people and things like that. And then, going to black into the, Furiosa crazy title sequence and everything like that. Really similar to how like Mad Max started and everything like that. We're not going to, compare too much, but it's interesting to see those like parallels in the story being told. Although this one has the chapters, which I thought were really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that aspect of it. It was very different from what I thought it would be in that sense. And I enjoyed the breakdown of the chapters rather than just like having this like being told in this like in the similar way that we had seen it before.
I thought that was an interesting way to go about it. And I think we're going to struggle a little bit not also comparing with Fury Road because they're so interconnected. So when I went to see it, my girlfriend hasn't seen Fury Road.
Your girlfriend?
My girlfriend.
Oh my God. This is new news to me.
Breaking it here.
Yay, everybody. Clap for Noah.
Okay.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Tell him congratulations in the comments. Sorry. It's great.
Appreciate it. My point is, thank you. My point is, when we went to see it, she hadn't seen Fury Road. And I told her, you don't really need to know too much about it to go into this one. Mm-hmm. But I was wrong. Luckily, afterwards, she said, and this is why I'm even bringing it up, it's good to have someone with fresh eyes versus someone who's seen Fury Road.
Right.
She said it didn't really take too much away from it for her at all to not know a lot of the different things. But I also feel like there's so much that relies on Fury Road for you to have a full understanding of this, that there was so much that she missed and so much that other people would potentially miss. So there's a little bit of a disconnect in this being a prequel, but also you really having to have seen the other one. And we can talk about like this suffers a lot from what a lot of prequels suffer from. It falls into those same things. Well, first off, George Miller is like widely known as like the modern day silent filmmaker. That's something that he's very known for, that people have talked about before, that he doesn't feel compelled for exposition.
Right. Okay.
He just wants to throw you into something, and there's this whole world that's already been built.
Right.
And he trusts that you'll jump into it, which halfway through Fury Road, I would argue, like, anybody who feels lost, you're connected. You're
halfway through, you're like, okay.
It's jarring, but the more you watch it, the more you, like, really fall into it.
Right, whereas Furiosa, like, we have the entire story. We understand where she comes from, where she's going, where she's trying to go, and then all of the obstacles that she has along the way, which is like everything is an obstacle.
Yeah, and it's complete expositional in this, which is so not George Miller's style at all. But the problem that prequels face is our imaginations make such a better backstory or create all these different things that sometimes when you go back and explain this whole thing, it doesn't necessarily live up to people's expectations, or what they see is potentially like a letdown. Okay. So there's certain, we'll get into it when we get towards the end of the movie, but there's some stuff where I didn't need to see where the origins of things happened.
Okay.
You know, like I know she's going to lose her arm, but like I wasn't watching Fury Road being like, I wonder when that point is and how.
I loved that aspect of it. But again, we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
We're going to talk about that later, but there's certain things with prequels that it sometimes falls short of what your own imagination or expectations can be. It's not always great to go in the past.
Well, this is her story about her beginnings, everything that happened to her to get to the point where she gets to Fury Road, where she's like, this is me finally getting to find the green place and everything like that. I think I actually really liked that he did all of that, because I was always really curious about the things that happened to Furiosa and how she became this badass figure that we, know and love in Fury Road.
And this was all developed before they even made Fury Road.
See, that's what I was interested in knowing, because when I rewatched Fury Road today, I was thinking, man, I wish they had done Furiosa first, actually, as I was like watching it, because it really just gives me all of the information and everything that I'm like thinking of and like wondering about while I'm watching this. When I finally saw Furiosa, that moment where she realizes that the green place is no longer there, I actually had a lot more emotion for her, and like knowing everything that she went throughout this entire thing, trying to get back, those moments when people were pulling her back and all of these things, her, her mother, her being with Jack and everything like that. And then it's just like, God, now you see why she had that, like, she just fell to the ground and just screamed. And it's like, girl, I feel your freaking pain because I know now what you went through. Because Fury Road, it was very much a, fast-paced movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the craziness. Like, it's basically just like, okay, we're going straight forward and we're just going to do the craziest shit possible. And it's fucking awesome. We got the heart pumping music and everything like that. We got the guitar playing dude and everything like that. But with Furiosa, it's a lot, obviously about her entire story. It's about, her being in the green place, us seeing her, how lush and beautiful it is. And now we know why it's so important for her to get back to it, because everything else is so desolate. Everyone else is so desperate to gain resources and to win win each other over, and like all of these things, or like, get the upper hand is what I'm trying to say. And in the green place, it was just pure peace. We had that beautiful civilization and everything like that. And now we know what she's fighting for. Mm-hmm. And we get to see, her mother and everything like that, how much of a badass she was, chasing after these guys. Also, Furiosa is a little girl, and she's like kicking ass, like,
Very
she knows exactly what she's doing in terms of like with the motorcycles and how to get the gas and everything like that. It's like, she comes from a place that's beautiful and abundant, but she also knows her shit. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we get Dementus, who is, I love his name because he is truly fucking demented. And it's interesting because we have that parallel between him and Immortan Joe, where, Joe in the first movie is the big villain because, he takes these women and he has these wives, mm-hmm. and he makes these gross kids. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that sucks. But we don't really see his, like, his he's kind of gross, but he's not like scary in the sense that, like, he's not Dementus. He's not demented. He is not this fucking tyrant who just destroys things and takes over things for no other reason than to just do them. He actually has like a reason for doing things in Furiosa. And I really enjoy that about this because, I thought he was going to be the main villain. Mm-hmm. And Chris Hemsworth as Dementus, it's just fucking like golden. He is like, the change in his voice and everything like that. Like,
fake nose, fake teeth.
The fake nose, the fake teeth, his little teddy bear that, it comes from his children and things like that. I thought his performance was just like wild. Mm-hmm. Absolutely wild. And I liked that they had that difference between Joe, who is not necessarily the main villain in this, and then Dementus, who is just like absolutely off the rails, killing people, destroying resources, taking Furiosa as his like captor, and all of these things, killing her mother right in front of her eyes. I mean, we see all of this stuff and it's like, talk about fucking childhood trauma, dude. Like, Jesus. Like, I'm surprised that Furiosa even is able to function after all of that. She actually is still able to get her shit together. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. So I'm curious about like how you felt about the, that transition into her in Dementus's world, and also like the difference between him and Joe as well.
Well, I would argue that she survived it because this world definitely the people in it are survivors of natural selection. If they were weak, they wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
So only the strong survives in this world that just kind of doesn't have rules.
Everyone has to have their specific purpose. Mm-hmm. And I liked that about this movie. Everyone had a purpose. Mm-hmm. A lot of movies that we've talked about so far, have had these characters that are kind of on the side. They don't really, there's no reason for them because there are other, the main character is the main focus. But these people, because they have this need for resources, and they have this, the structure where they say, if you don't have a purpose, there's no purpose for you in this world. Mm-hmm. And that's very much like being in the movie as well. Like, every character had a reason for being there, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, even when Dementus tries to take over the Citadel, and there's an example of people sacrificing themselves for Joe, it's mm-hmm. people are going to do things extreme to find some sort of normalcy or order or just calm in the chaos, even if that normalcy is chaos.
Yeah.
There's at least a place for them.
Yeah, I love how world. Joe's also just like, bitch, you trying to get my shit? Like, please. Like, nah. Like, I got you. It's great.
Yeah. Like, everything's terrible. This is a different version of terrible that has some sort of structure. Like, no one's gonna rebel against me. You know, there's that. I thought Chris Hemsworth did a great job.
It was so fun.
He was. I don't remember that. Was it A Night at the El Royale? There was a movie he was in where he's kind of like a sort of cult leader, kind of charismatic.
Never heard of it.
It's a great movie. I'm probably not the right title. I really should have looked it up, but it reminded me of that where he just can just have charisma for days. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where when he was Thor, people are like, oh, can you believe he's actually funny too? It's like, like he has all this stuff. He just isn't always given the vehicle that allows him to do this. You know, and even when he's been funny, it's also been like him being a himbo. You know, it's not really him having these layers. And in this, there's definite layers. I mean, even the fact that he adopts her, little Dementus.
So adorbs.
But even with that, giving her the teddy bear, part of me, because of how crazy he was, it all even made me wonder if him having a daughter was the truth. Because he lies later and says that's his daughter. So who knows if he just adopts little children to then corrupt them as they get older, because like flash forward to the end, he's like really proud of what she became. But like it's so there, I just think that, but I'm just saying that there's so much to his performance that you wonder how much of this is true and how much of this is this narrative
that he's created for him.
Yeah, and every once in a while there's cracks in his narrative where you see the real honest version of him. But so I thought it was fascinating. The nose, not a fan of, especially there was a scene where you could see straight through it with the sunlight.
I actually didn't notice
facing
that.
to the side. It's like a completely different color where you can see it's a total, like, you knew it was a prosthetic because you know what he looks like, but you could see straight through it. And I really wish they would have fixed that in post. But I thought he did a great job. We'll get to it towards the end, but the fact that Joe is in this and having the knowledge of Fury Road, I think I kind of wish he wasn't in this for narrative reasons.
Okay.
And even you saying like showing he has structure, it kind of normalizes him in a
definitely
way that really
normalizes it.
shouldn't, because we know he's
Not
a
great
monster.
person. Yeah.
So her aligning with him isn't very satisfying because you're like, he's also a terrible human. Who am I rooting for?
Well, it's like now you understand also why she decided to stay at the Citadel for as long as she did, though, because it has a little bit more structure comparatively. She has all the resources that she can have in order to find her way back home eventually and stuff like that. There's no way she would have been able to do any of that with Dementus.
Sure. Totally get that. I wish there was maybe a different second antagonist or someone she could have potentially partnered with. Regardless.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to get too ahead because we're kind of at the beginning. In a incredibly long, like it was a good hour or so before Anya even shows up, by the way, which is pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, that was
we spent
really
a lot of time with the little version of Furiosa.
Yeah, you know, I actually
I didn't mind it. I'm just surprised.
I think a lot of the time I was kind of like, I think the chapters could have been like 5 minutes shorter for each of them. But I did enjoy being able to see that much of her beginning, you know, especially now, like, you know, we know in Fury Road, she took the women, you know, she's, you know, trying to get them back to the green place to have a better life. And now we know why she did that, because she almost became one of them. She was like, you know, this little kid that, what's his name, Rictus or Scrotus or whichever one, you know, was really interested in, you know, in the beginning. And she basically found a way out of that by making herself as unattractive as possible in their sense so that she could then, you know, become the stowaway eventually. And I think that, you know, it's great to see that also, like, she's not only just a little kid, but she's smart as fuck. And she is resourceful as fuck. And she is able to do that in this sort of world as well.
I definitely, and I think it's Rictus Erectus and the brother Scrotus.
Yes.
I think were the two.
I kept thinking it was Rectus. So I was just like, why Rectus and Scrotus?
Yeah, it's
beautiful names.
Interesting names.
And then the dude with the nose, with the gold plated nose and his nips.
This movie was super nipple heavy.
I was like, dude, I like.
You had Dementus having his nipples ripped off. You had that dude. Like, I feel like George Miller, when he finished editing Fury Road, is like, God damn, we cut out the nipples on that dude's suit and he did not play with them enough because he played with them nonstop. It was so distracting.
It was so distracting.
So distracting that, again, my girlfriend is the one that mentioned he had a gas mask on his dick.
I saw that too.
I was so disturbed by him rubbing his nipples nonstop that I didn't even see that. And he was on screen for a long time for me to not notice that.
I'm really curious.
I think they were his emotional support nipples.
Yeah, he was just like, like every time you could see his facial expression, he was upset. He had to just rub it. And I'm just like, you know what? Everyone has their thing. So I kind of get it. But at the same time, like you could turn around or something.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to see that all the time.
Half of that, I would be like, he's into his nipples. I need to see it that much.
Like, come on, dog.
But yeah, that's interesting for sure. But yeah, it just, and that kind of goes, not to segue or to relate to the nipple thing, but it kind of like this whole world that George Miller has made that just you wouldn't necessarily think about. And it's weird and off kilter, but it works.
It definitely works. Yeah. Every character had their thing, their weird, sort of personality tics and things like that. And the Citadel definitely showed a lot more of that with those types of characters rather than what everyone was doing in Dementus's world, because mostly they were just following every order that he made, even if it was the wrong thing. They were just drones basically. Whereas, we have those the war boys, in the Citadel and stuff like that do everything that they're told, but people have a little bit more of a say, I feel like.
I would say that they all know their roles in the Citadel. They don't, but I will, to your point, when it comes to they have a say, it's showing the fundamental difference between Dementus being the talker and Joe not talking at all, being so powerful that he's confident with his group having their say.
Yes, and that's what the structure is.
Yeah. So he just knows, like, they're all in this for the betterment of me, so I'm confident and powerful enough where I'm not threatened by that at all.
Yeah.
Where Dementus is literally, like, just chaos, insecurity, all of this.
I've got to do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Even when he took over, was it Gastown? That was a beautiful impression. I'm like, is he in the room?
Thanks.
Even when he took over Gastown and they came, he even admit, like, they're crazy. And he helped get them out because he was Dementus was panicking. Mm-hmm. And having that whole sequence.
I thought that was interesting, him taking over Gastown, because it did show a little bit of him, like, being a little bit smarter, in his leadership. But then he's like a terrible leader. Mm-hmm. He just destroys everything that he touches pretty much. And he just, throws things around and again, like, wastes resources. And clearly, like, he's a threat to their world in general and he needs to be shut the fuck down.
Yeah, he depletes resources without figuring out a way to get more. So he has to go bigger. Mm-hmm. He has to take over other things because he's running out of stuff himself. He hasn't figured out how to just manage that where you have the input and output being equal. It's all just consumer, so he has to keep going and has to keep moving on to other things. It was inevitable he'd go back to the Citadel. Mm-hmm. But how did you feel Anya did in this?
I thought she was good. She was good.
Wow. Okay, now it's my turn to be like, that sounds like a neg.
It's not necessarily a neg. It's just there was a lot with the role. There was a lot going on and everything like that. There was the emotions and everything with her family dying, or her mom dying. Obviously, that's the younger Furiosa. But then she still kind of has that inside. You kind of want to see more of that throughout the film. Mm-hmm. Her those memories and things like that. There wasn't as much emotion as I thought there would be. Obviously, she has to be this tough person in this tough world. We did have those moments with Jack and everything like that, which I thought were really great moments with him and, with their experience, kind of like similar to how Furiosa and Max meet up. And, Max is trying to get away and everything like that. And Furiosa's got the rig and he's trying to take it over. Again, one of those parallels. Jack being the person that's like, hey, I know you're trying to get away, but I'll show you everything. And she ends up becoming trustworthy of him because he's that person that's showing her the way. I still feel like there wasn't as much emotion with her that I felt like could have been expressed more.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does.
I mean, I've seen a lot of her performances, and she does really well in them.
Yeah, she's amazing in the menu.
Absolutely. Oh my God. In the menu, every single time she like looked at them, it was like every emotion you could see it. In this movie, I think it's more of her being tough, and that was what we were supposed to expect. And that's what this movie was, her, toughing it out in this world. I just, I feel like there could have been a little bit more.
Yeah. She potentially been intimidated by Charlize Theron's
maybe
performance, because there's a lot of gravitas there. There's a lot of grit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that she brought to Furiosa.
Yeah. Again, she falls, in the sand, and she just that. She belts out that cry. That's Furiosa's pain, and I didn't really see it as much with Anya.
Yeah, and especially in the final sequence with Dementus, her monologue, I thought, just fell flat. I felt it wasn't as strong a performance as it would have been if Charlize had done it, or it was. Again, George Miller's great at the silent moments. He can do close-up of the eyes, close-up of the face, all this
Lots
stuff.
of close-ups in this movie compared to the first one.
Right.
Yeah. A little bit too much.
A little bit too heavy on it, for
yeah.
sure. But in those moments, it's fine because it's just the cinematographer doing all the work and them being stoic. But sure, that that was. I can't say she was wrong for the role, but it felt like lesser than a little.
Yeah, which again, I don't want to compare the two, because they're two different performances,
and to
two
be
different
fair,
actresses.
Mad Max Fury Road. The comment about that is it was more about Furiosa than was Max, and I feel like in Furiosa it was more about Dementus than Furiosa.
Oh my God, it was so much more about Dementus than it was Furiosa.
So with him being
really
so big, she's gonna seem more quiet and muted just in comparison.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, definitely. His performance was so, it was so out there. It's so much of the focus in the story that she's kind of in the back burner, and that's a lot of what it is. She didn't really have that shine factor that we saw with Dementus. So she was kind of on the sidelines a little bit. Yeah, unfortunately.
She kind of is the vehicle that pushes the story along, but Dementus is more of the focus than anything, just because he is so big.
Yeah.
So I think, to her defense, that's what I would say, because I do think Chris just brought it, and she has to be that stoic, and he can just chew up every scene that he's in.
Yeah, pretty much. I was thinking a lot about the cinematography and everything like that too, in the sense that there was a lot of sand. So I was curious what you thought about all the sand.
I am not saying anything.
Because we know that Noah is not a fan of sand or dunes.
And we know, based on YouTube, our viewers have problems with me and my thoughts on sand. This shockingly, I didn't mind that, because I thought the costumes and the set design and the world building just was the focus. I didn't mind there being so much sand.
I mean, it is a desolate world as well, post-apocalyptic and everything too. So you're going to get a lot of just gross looking scenes. Unfortunately, though, in that sense, the gross-looking scenes aren't as pretty as the gross-looking scenes in Fury Road, because we do have, that beautiful cinematography, the silhouettes that I just, everyone knows I love.
There was a lot of heavy lifting. We'll talk more about the CGI in general, but there was a lot of heavy lifting in the scenery with CGI this time around. The last movie was filmed in Namibia. I think that's how you say it. If I'm wrong, we're going to get skewered, but I already know I'm not the fan favorite of this show, so I'm okay with that. Made peace with it.
Guys, be nice to
Namibia.
Noah.
It's Namibia. I know it, but this one was filmed in Australia.
Yeah.
So they had to cheat a lot to keep the aesthetics as close as possible with CGI and green screen and things like that. So it's not going to be able to have the visuals. It was just so expensive. The last film, they actually delayed it 2 years because where they wanted to film, it got too much rain and it got too green. So they're like, screw it, we're going to this other country. They told Warner Brothers en route that they were going there. So they had to pay extra. And this time Warner Brothers said, no, we're going to film it where we intended. It's cheaper in Australia. You deal with it. So because of that, the aesthetics of the scenery really suffered, I thought. I shouldn't say suffered. It was just, it wasn't as on par with Fury Road as we want it to be, especially seeing how they're so closely intertwined.
Yeah, it's interesting too, though, that you say that it was CGI heavy, because I didn't necessarily notice that with all the scenery. I did notice it with some things, obviously, but there was
green screen and CGI,
right,
so there was just a lot of artificiality that Fury Road's famous for not doing.
Right, but there was a moment when Dementus was on the ground that I noticed that maybe around the end that there was like a blood trail on his face that was also CG.
Yeah,
and I was like, I don't understand why they would do something like that. Like, that's very noticeable.
Yeah.
Also, this is a high budget film. Like, why does it look so fake? You know what I mean?
That brings us to the CGI conversation.
Okay, we're doing that.
Yeah, which the people who worked on the film, there's a few of them that expressed a little bit of disappointment about how they felt the CGI wasn't really up to par where they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they were rushed or if it was a budgetary thing or whatnot, but the other comparison that's unfavorable to Furiosa is Fury Road. CGI was used to clean up things. It was almost entirely practical or made as practical as possible
which
with
is
CGI,
always best.
which is why it was so, one of the reasons it was so beloved. Because in a CGI world in these big blockbuster movies, this one says, screw it. We're making this as practical and real as possible. Like, there's some War Boys where I'm like, I think they died. Like, for real. I think the actor died because I knew it was like real.
Like, intense, yeah.
Whereas this one relied so heavily on CGI in parts where, I mean, I wouldn't know how to do that stuff practically, but it was so apparent how much CGI, and it felt like, I love Marvel movies, but it felt like they were using it really heavily.
Yeah.
And it was noticeable, like that blood, definitely. And there's certain areas where it's like, this is lesser than.
And the choreography, wasn't as up to par as, you would kind of expect it in this type of action film and things like that. It's like, this is cool, but it's not like, oh my God, this is insane. I can't believe this. You know what I mean? Like the fight scenes and the guns and everything like that.
And there was a scene that was amazing where they're in the rig going and you have the guys in the parachutes coming down.
Yes, that's actually what I was thinking about.
So intense and so amazing. And unfortunately, it reminded me of Fury Road being almost all of that. And I'm like, oh, I miss, why can't...
Same.
Like, it just, all it did was just felt like, like a sucker punch where it's like, oh, like, I want this to be that. And it just wasn't. So sadly, it gave me nostalgia for a different movie.
Yeah, so Fury Road used to be my absolute favorite action film. It's absolutely insane. It's a type of action film that you want. Like, it doesn't try to be anything more than fucking ridiculous action. You see all this crazy shit and you're like, fucking go.
And it's all story. Like, it's telling the story with the action.
Exactly. Like, nothing is, explained to you. It's literally just like every time you see something, you understand what's happening through the conversations that they're having, through all of the different things that are happening, people
problem
chasing
solving.
them, problem solving, all of that stuff.
The arc of the War Boy that actually joins them.
Yes.
Like, his whole arc is once he's a part of that.
Yeah. And, this obviously a very different film because it is following her entire storyline and everything like that. It's just, there were, like you said, those moments where you kind of just wish there was a little bit more of the crazy shit. But again, we appreciate it for what it is because it is a film about Furiosa's life and we're understanding everything that, happened to her before Fury Road. So, different film.
Yeah, which I think, this is a good time to give my hot take.
Oh, yeah. Noah's hot take. We should just, make a thing where it's like, like a spinny thing pops up on the screen. Noah's hot take.
So my hot take is there's one change that, for me, I think would make the movie feel better. Like I enjoy it more. There's one thing behind the scenes. Like, keep the film exactly how it is.
Okay.
The one thing I think behind the scenes that could have bumped up the perception and audiences, both expectations, like match them more, make it more understandable.
Okay.
Is if George Miller didn't direct this.
Who would have directed it, though?
Doesn't matter. So all the time.
it does matter.
No, hold up.
It matters
Hold
who
on.
directs
Hear
the
me
freaking
out.
movie.
Hear me out.
Okay.
When it comes to franchises or even like video games, whatever, whenever you have something that's beloved, a studio always wants to make a sequel.
Yeah.
So sometimes the visionary that made it that huge isn't a part of it, and we accept, okay, it's not the same vision. So it's someone else. So it makes sense why like a studio, no.
I do not agree with that.
Absolutely.
Come on, some of the best sequels we've ever seen are, the same person, the same director.
But I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying the fact that this feels lesser than is because George Miller has an expectation way up here. But if we know going into this movie, okay, it's someone else's vision and probably the studio, hold on, you're not even hearing me.
I didn't say anything.
You are doing this. You are being negative. But I'm saying
I'm never
this
negative.
movie that relies more on CGI than before, that tends to like possibly water down some of the feelings based on like trying to explain more, even the fact that it's a prequel, all these different things that studios do for cash grabs for franchises. I think this would be forgiven and more and loved more because they're like, hey, it may not be as good as the original, but it's not the same person. I think expectations would be lowered. And I think people would have enjoyed it a lot better. The expectations are Fury Road, and we keep saying it doesn't match that.
I think this would have been an absolute dumpster fire if George Miller hadn't directed this.
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying at all.
I get what you're saying.
I'm saying if it's the exact same movie, if it's this exact same movie, all of the things we say are slightly lesser than in this movie than Fury Road would be forgiven because it isn't the same person that has the expectations that crazy high.
Regardless, we would still see Fury Road as its predecessor.
True.
So at that point, we would still say there are things about Fury Road we liked better than Furiosa because we have that expectation.
But I think we'd be kinder on this film. Because we don't have someone where we have these massive expectations. Our expectations are lowered because it's not the same specific person who created this.
Our expectations are the same because it's a prior film that we know is very similar to this one.
We'll have high expectations, but it won't be as massively high because it's not the same person. We're going to be more forgiving that this relies more on CGI because it's not George Miller, so this person might not know how to pull this off like George Miller would have. There's so many examples.
I think we should agree to disagree and just say that we're two different people that have two different opinions on certain things and not lump each other together as we would think this. Because I don't agree with that.
I'm saying there's a lot of people that can match expectations if they go into it knowing it's not the exact same person, so they're not expecting as high a level.
I think it's just
more of the stuff they love.
For me, I think that this would be a lower expectation if blah, blah, blah. Because I don't know, everybody tell us in the comments below what you think. Do you agree that it would be a lower expectation if there were a different director and if it would be better or not? Because I personally think that is not the case.
I'm saying maybe this is what people answer. Do you feel you would have less of a letdown feeling if it was someone else with the exact same thing, but going into it knowing it's not the exact same director behind it?
Okay. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A lot of us, I will say that, because not just me.
Okay.
A lot of us are more forgiving of things, like more forgiving of spinoffs, because we know it's not that core group. So we know we manage expectations. Those of us who do that.
Okay.
So some of us who do that are more forgiving and manage our expectations versus just expecting the exact same thing.
Okay.
Is my point.
Yeah, we'll see what people think about that.
Yeah, we'll see. But if it's the same exact movie.
So let's talk about I guess we talked about Jack and Furious and everything like that. How did you feel about how that part of the story progressed? You know, them working together and everything like that. And then suddenly, they're found by fucking Dementus. Mm-hmm. And then he, obviously, tortures them. wasting resources all day yet again, and Furiosa escaping with her arm. I know that you said that you didn't really care for seeing her arm, but yeah, how did you feel about like their that relationship between the two?
Well, I mean, just the arm was an example of sometimes our imaginations come up with like reasoning for something and it's not always met. I was fine with how she lost her arm.
I think again, fucking badass.
Yeah, it was cool as shit what she did.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was cool. I liked their relationship because I felt like it allowed the brutality of the world to rest a little bit. It showed a little bit more heart in the film in a world that really doesn't have that. We all knew it was doomed because, for one, spoiler alert, he's not in Fury Road.
I know.
But also we know that there's just not really a place in this world for tenderness. That, like, compassion is a weakness. Tenderness is a weakness.
Every time you think that she's going to get away, she has her moment, it's just completely taken away from her.
And she has a bad habit of going back to try and save people.
Honestly,
when she
every
should
time
keep
they
going.
went, yeah, her mom should have killed that fucking bitch in the tent. She should have, what would Furiosa have done? Yeah, she should have just gone without Jack, granted, like, he was someone that she cared about, but if she had gone, she would have been able to go to the green place. So it's just like every time, it's just like she has that moment, but she just goes back.
I thought it was good. I thought he was great in that role. That actor was phenomenal.
Yeah, I think so too. I want to see more of him. I don't know. I don't think I've seen him in anything else.
Not a lot of things, but he just made me trust him. That
Same.
he didn't have shady instincts from the beginning. And in that world, that's not a easy task to make me feel comfortable with the character immediately.
Exactly. He didn't really have that much screen time, but you immediately felt that sense of comfort, which is brilliant.
Yeah, so I liked it. I thought it was important and necessary in the film to have some moments that kind of tug at the heart, but also make her story way more tragic. Because that's someone that's like, okay, finally, she has some sort of something. Some sort of peace, literally anything.
Even if it's just like one person that she can relate to or who understands her or something like that.
Yeah, so I thought that was a great aspect of this film.
Yeah. Sad for Jack. I don't know. Jackson movies just don't really get...
No. At least there wasn't, she didn't get away on a door that for sure he could have also been on. So
I don't know. The debate still stands.
Fair. But no, I thought that was a good element. It was a great also vehicle to, not like she needed that much more reasoning to go after Dementus. But one of the criticisms I've heard of the film, and I think Jack, my opinion about why Jack was important kind of goes against it, is some people felt dissatisfied that part of the story was her getting to the green place, but we already know she's not getting to the green place because of Fury Road. So why is that this vehicle for the story? But I would argue Jack is the thing that pivots her to being more about revenge against Dementus.
Yes, definitely.
So I think that was important. Sure, as young, of course she wants to go back to the green place. That's where she's originally from. And sure, she hates Dementus, but I don't think there was really that thought necessarily of revenge. That wasn't the focal thing. She still wanted to get back home. And then he goes and kills that guy. And then that is her like, okay, what do I have to do to just take this guy out? Like now it's personal. So I feel like that was important to pivot the plot of the story. There was a lot of pivots in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where like if she hadn't killed Dementus, the world probably would have gone to shit even faster and further. So it needed to happen.
If she had or hadn't?
Hadn't. Yeah, because he may have, eventually like looked for the green place or something like that. There were moments when I was like, oh my God, like what happened to the planes and things like that, before I saw that they had like the aerial objects or whatever. And, they could have easily use those types of objects to scavenge for other lands and things like that. I was very curious of why they didn't try to do something like that. But eventually he may have been able to do that, even though maybe he thought the Citadel was the green place because, he realized that was a place with abundance as well. So he kind of stopped looking for the place that Furiosa came from. But I don't know, very curious about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions in this world that you really shouldn't ask.
Right.
Like, if they have gasoline, why are they not just driving in a straight line as far as they can go to see what's out there? Why are we staying in such a tight area? That's probably a
The
question you
Australian
just
outback, though, you know?
Yeah.
It's very vast.
Yeah, and you don't need to think too hard about that. They have their little gasland.
I loved how
bullet
they had that.
farm.
They showed us the different worlds as well, because we didn't see any of that in Fury Road. It was basically just a straight line and then back.
Yeah.
So we got Gas Town, like you said. We have Bullet Town. We have the Citadel, and then also wherever the Green Place, and then also wherever Dementus was with his horde of people.
Yeah, I think that was just a random place. He
Yeah.
kind of outgrew just being on the outskirts. And I think it was intentional that it was kind of a biker gang because they're, known kind of in the outlaw aspect anyway.
Right.
Very much nomadic just in general. So that helps tell that story without having to really fully explain it.
Right.
Until Dementus outgrows it and gets itchy and wants to
Go
bigger. And then it's like, shit, I don't know how to do this, so I need to go bigger. And he keeps doing that.
It's cool seeing that expansion of the world. So.
Yeah, I was a little surprised we didn't see really any of the 40-day war.
Yeah, that was interesting how they just kind of did a montage, and it was like, okay, cool. I guess that's over. And Furiosa's just like, peace.
Yeah, like, we're just gonna let them do that whole thing. It didn't, but also, I don't know, maybe George Miller read my mind and I said, I don't know. I don't have anyone to root for because I also know that Joe's terrible. So why am I rooting for either side?
Oh, right.
I kind of don't give a shit who runs Citadel because it seems corrupt anyway. So maybe he's like, no one really cares. It's really about Dementus and Furiosa.
Yeah, he's like, chill. I got you.
So, but I was a little surprised we didn't see that. We saw a lot of just journeying through the desert. Not a lot of that fight. But again,
I feel like he got tired and it was like, actually, you know what? This is going to be like a 2.5 hour long movie almost. I don't need to show you guys all that.
Yeah. It's like, it's already going to be crazy long.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I thought that was interesting that he didn't show that.
Yeah. Do we want to start talking about the ending now?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we have Furiosa. She's chasing after Dementus and his people that have, scattered or whatever. And we have her finally get to him and, kind of torture him in a way. She cuts off his water supply. He thinks he can shoot her. She's already taken his bullets. He thinks he can cut her. She's taken the knife and gotten rid of the blade and all that stuff. So she has her moment with him where she's toying with him in similar ways that he, toyed with other people. And we get to the point where we have that narrator again, telling us the things that people think may have happened to him. And I thought it was really weird because it made me think of a series of unfortunate events with Count Olaf and how they had the narrator who was, I think, Jude Law, and telling people how they made, his punishment was making him do all the things that he made the children do. And so we have this kind of parallel between that with Dementus kind of being tortured in similar ways that he tortured other people. And I was like, this is different from how I thought this movie would end.
Yeah. It was very unsatisfying for me at the end of that, if I'm being honest with myself. It was... I get it. So if we backtrack a little bit to Dementus talking to her when she's beating the crap out of him.
Right. Oh, yes, the conversation.
Yeah.
That's a very important conversation.
Once he realized who she was, he looked like a proud father.
He did.
At what she became. First off, by the way, her wig cap, terrible. It really bothered me when it was from the ground up and you're like, it's barely on. It's like a hat on her head. It's not even.
I was kind of just like, is that supposed to be her hair?
Yeah, it was awful. But that aside, just like when you could see through his nose, I'm like, come on, guys. No one in post. Anyway, but in that moment, it's this whole same thing with Mad Max, very parallel where, his revenge, his whole thing, it's just eating him alive. And I think potentially in that moment, she thought, well, he thinks I've become what he is.
Right.
Because he's so proud. And so maybe that's when the pivot happened of her not outright killing him, but making him a tree, I guess.
Well, he has that, like, you know, you're half dead, I'm half dead, we're same, which is actually a parallel between what Max says as well in the beginning of Fury Road, where he's like, I'm half dead and things like that. So I thought it was interesting because, you know, like you said, he's like that proud father and everything like that. And she kind of does end up not becoming him, but she was kind of raised by him in a way. So it's like,
it's kind of like you rebel against your parents until you're an adult. And you're like, God damn it, I just became, like them.
Yeah, like, you know, similar to that person I was trying not to be. And I did like that little, you know, speech that he had, you know, with her and everything like that moment. But again, like you said, with the tree.
I also felt it was a little bit of a cop-out. I understand we started with this being, again, storybook. This is hearsay. This is someone giving the tale of Furiosa. But the whole, like, somebody thinks this, other people think this.
Right.
I'm like, pick a lane. Like, just, this is not
She should have just shot him in the back of the head and been done with it. Or in the front of the head, like she wanted to, because fuck him and his wishes. Like, if he wants to get shot in the back of the head, I'll shoot in the front so he can see me smiling.
The end was not awesome for me because also I didn't like the whole like cameo tease of Mad Max watching all that.
I thought that was fucking hilarious. I was like, okay, so George is like basically like, guys, remember this movie I made? Hey, guess what?
And we're gonna get back to that during the credits too, but like even that's like, okay, but this is a lot of time goes by before he even before Fury Road's supposed to happen. So why is he here now in the same position he was at the start of Fury Road?
Well,
I didn't particularly care for that because I felt like what you were saying, it was the end was a little, hey, remember, get excited for the movie that you saw previously. But technically takes place later. And also the end credits where they're just showing you like, here's the movie you wish this was.
Please rewatch this now.
Yeah, remember this is, you like this because you liked this. Like it felt, again, with that amazing action sequence, unfortunately it hit me like, oh, I really wish it was more like Fury Road.
I mean, okay, like I appreciate this movie for what it is. You know, like I said before, I really liked Furiosa. I liked, you know, the action sequences. I liked the performances and everything like that. We had some fucking awesome moments with this movie. It isn't Fury Road, and that's fine because Fury Road is its own movie. It is, you know, that action movie that everyone was just like, holy shit, this is insane. But, you know, it's one of those things where I don't want to compare them because, like we said, it's a completely different movie. So I don't want to say like, oh, I want Furiosa to be, you know, Fury Road. It's a good movie, regardless of whether or not like it's as good as the movie that came before it.
Yeah, I would say I'm a fan of the production design, the costumes, the whole filmmaking aspect of it, including most of the performances. I'd say almost all the performances. Narratively, it just didn't work for me. But
not
I
even
think,
with the story breaks with the chapters.
No, not really. I thought those are fine. I like when movies do that. I think it's a tall ask for the mainstream audience because that's very much a cinephile. We love that stuff.
Oh gosh, here we go with the cinephile.
I know. Again, people in the comments do not like when I call myself one of those. But I feel like for people who love film, I love the chapter aspect, especially when it's like a storyteller and I'm seeing an auteur do their thing. It's very purposeful. It's tough for mainstream audience because it stops the flow as it goes. I can appreciate it, but a lot of people just want to sit and just turn their brains off, watch the film, or just go with the pacing is so important.
Especially with an action film as well. Yeah,
so I like that, but I just mean like there's certain narrative choices I just feel it wasn't totally cohesive for me.
I can definitely understand that. Yeah. But I mean, again, all in all, I've really enjoyed this movie. I saw it twice. I'll probably end up seeing again when it comes on streaming. And I think it was a fun watch.
Yeah. It was fun for what it was, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, this has been an interesting conversation. I'm really curious to see what people think about in the comments. So let us know what you thought about Furiosa in the comments below. And also, yeah, any hot takes you guys have on certain things. Did you guys agree with what we said? Or are there some things that you didn't agree with? Let us know. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.